This interview is, well, I'll let you introduce yourself, giving your name, and we would like to know the year of your birth.
Oh, okay. My name's Barbara Elliott, and I was born 1944.
Okay.
78 years old.
Okay, great. And what would you like to share with us about Orangevale and your experience?
Well, and the reason I got together with the Orangevale History Project is because I was secretary at Orangevale School for 23 years at the school, 7 years subbing, so altogether 30 years. And we moved here from Sacramento in 1976. Mm-hmm. And we have 4 kids, Stacy and Gary, and the twins, Brett and Blaine. And we love this property because it's 3.5 acres and has a pool. We've had horses here. We've had steers here. We've had goats here. We've had every imaginable animal in the world. And now we're inundated by Canadian geese that are not ours, but they have adopted us. Uh-huh. And if there's ever one that's hurt, then my husband, Lauren, is going to take care of it and feeds it and gives it water because it's hurt. And then his brothers and sisters all come. And we have had as many as 30 Canadian geese in our pasture. And now that they come here to build a nest and lay their eggs and then have babies, and that's happened the last 3 or 4 years in a row. And then we discovered that they return to wherever they were born. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason why we have 30 or 40 geese in our pasture, is because that they all share that they were born here. Adrian's place next door, Bruce's place next door. So yeah, lots of Canadian geese. But yeah.
About what year did you move to this property?
In 1976.
Did you build this house, or was it already?
This place was built in 1949 and added on to. We bought it in the 70s, and so we have an avocado green kitchen and blown-in ceilings with sparkles in it. And yeah. Lucky us.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, see? And we've done some things to it, but we've lived here for 46 years. And when we first moved here, the houses across the street weren't built, and so we rode our horses, and Granite Bay was not in existence, and so our street Peerless dead ends into Granite Bay, and we would take the horses out there and ride them over to Green Lake and Hidden Lake, which are now part of Wexford and a lot of gated communities. And they should have seen what those lakes looked like before. They've been a little spruced up since then. Mm-hmm. But it was really enjoyable. Where we live, north of Oak and east of Hazel, are 2-acre minimums. The houses across the street have 4 houses on 1 acre. They were grandfathered in. But most of these properties, Bruce next door has 5, Adrian has 2, and then most of the places are large pieces of land. But now that we have, and it's owned agriculture, but they put a meter on it a few years ago, a state law, that you have metered water, and so we can no longer afford to water our pastures and keep our animals. Just had to happen. Well, and especially with the drought now, yeah. There's no way. So instead of having 4 acres to have animals on, we just have 4 acres to maintain. So
you said that you worked at the school.
When we moved here, the twins were 1. When they turned 2, I said I'd go back to work. I went to the school district. I got a job immediately at the counseling secretary at La Sierra High School. I worked there for 3 years, and then they opened Casa Viva, the on-site continuation at Casa, around 1980. And I worked there for 3 years, and I was trying to get my children into Orangevale Open School. And each time I called, the secretary was too busy to talk to me. And so I said, if I ever work there, I will never do that. And I would stop whatever I was doing, and if somebody called and wanted to know about the school, I would stop what I was doing and tell them what to do. I was never going to allow that, because it took me a long time to get my kids into Orangevale School, just because she didn't have the time. So I started at Orangevale Open K-8 School in 1983, and moved my two youngest over from Green Oaks in 4th grade. They started the fall semester after I came there. And they were there 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And then they went to Pasteur because we didn't have a 7-8 at Orangevale Open at the time. When I first started at Orangevale School, it was half traditional and half open. The one half of the school was a traditional school. The other half, which was the old section of the school, was open structure. And there was just a kindergarten, a 1-2, a 3-4, and a 5-6, I believe.
Just like
Combination classes. Pardon?
Just like Pershing.
Yeah, yeah, they split, yeah. And when somebody would come to the counter and be interested in the school, and if they weren't interested in participating at the school at all, they chose to go to the traditional section of the school. If parents came in, they said, I've heard about the school, I really want to be part of it. Then they went into the open structure school, and it was fairly small at the time. And when my boys went there, I think that there were only 7 boys, and the rest were all girls. So they got to know the 7 boys really well, because 2 of them were twins, yeah. And Jeremy Bacon and his cousin Brian Shevlin. There's 4 of the 7. John Cockrell, yeah, there weren't too many of them. And considering we didn't have a 7-8, they went to Pasteur, and I was one in a group that met with Pasteur to try and have a section of Pasteur called ESP, Extended Studies Program, for the open kids, because there was no place for them to continue their open structure philosophy other than for 7th and 8th grade. So they started that, and then anybody could join, which they did. And one of the, I give the spiel about Orangevale Open. Orangevale Open is a parent participation program. Parents participate 2 hours per child per week in the classroom. All the classes go on field trips monthly. All the classes go on overnight field trips. Parents are fingerprinted and TB tested before they can drive on a field trip. And they're monthly parent meetings that parents must attend with the teacher and discuss any concerns that they have, or concerns of the teacher or concerns of the parents, and plan the field trips. So they started that at Pasteur, about not monthly field trips, but field trips about 3 or 4 times a year, and it worked out perfectly. And then the second year that they were in it, then more people wanted to join, and then Pasteur decided that it was such a good program that they wanted the whole school to be like that. Well, you can't have that unless you have parents. So it just pretty well fell apart. And so the people at Orangevale Open decided that they wanted to have 7th, 8th at our school. We'd already tried one method. It wasn't working. So let's see if we can get it approved. Jody Graff was our principal at that time, and she was very supportive of the program, and some of the parents were very actively involved, and I more or less didn't take part in that, but because they met as a group, and they presented bylaws and went to the board, and with Jody's support to have the program there, they said we could have a K-8 program. In the meantime, after I was at Orangevale School about 2 or 3 years, they opened Ottoman Elementary on Ottoman Avenue Road in Orangevale. And my principal at the time, Karen Hunter, became their principal. And so she left to take care of them. And so all the traditional children at Orangevale went to Ottoman. And then
Pam Costa was there for a while.
Pam Costa?
Yeah.
No.
Ottoman.
Oh, she might have been at Ottoman maybe after Karen was. I can't, because Pam was at Pershing, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when after I retired and I subbed at Pershing one day, and
Okay.
and yeah.
Because I did a show for her over at Ottoman.
Oh,
Yeah.
at Ottoman. So it was, some of the teachers that I knew went over to the new Ottoman school, and then our building became completely open structure, K through, well, it was K6 for a long time and then became K8. There's a hill at the school, and one day it was really steep hill to go down to the playground, and one day a little girl tumbled down, just didn't break anything but really scraped her knee, and people went to the board and said something has to be done, so then they put a stairway down there. But we were at that school until I think till the year 2007, and that's when I retired, because we had Orangevale Open had a huge waiting list in every single grade, and the secretary, I was able to maintain the waiting list, and after several years the district decided that they're going to take care of the waiting list. The problem with that is they couldn't respond to an opening right away, and they'd be calling somebody to come in, and sometimes it'd be a week or two before they can fill an opening spot. When the secretary had the waiting list, that was their priority. They made sure that they filled it so a child didn't have to come in late, or it worked out okay, but that has now changed. And let's see, I'm trying to think where that should go next, is that we had this long waiting list, and the waiting list was so long, people were getting annoyed and complaining to the district. And so they moved the school from Orangevale Open to Roberts. Roberts had closed, and it was a bigger facility, and we could take in most of the kids off the waiting list. And that's the year that I decided to retire, because why should I set up an office for the new secretary when she could set up the office for herself? Kathy LaForge was my clerk at Orangevale for maybe 15 years or so, and she took over being secretary at Orangevale School at the new location. And so I told her if she would take the job, I would help her, not realizing I would be helping her for 7 years.
Oh.
And so 7 years later, by that time I was 70, and I said, I just can't do this anymore, because I came in every Thursday for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And did the budget. And the district paid me to do the budget if I would consider doing that, which worked out fine. And then I subbed at other schools, and that isn't what I had in mind for my retirement. So having 4 kids, and I wanted some time on my own. So in 2014, I stopped subbing, and I've enjoyed the school. My 2 youngest children went 4th, 5th, and 6th at Orangevale, and my youngest grandchildren, Amanda and Austin Hodge, attended there. Kindergarten through either 6th for Amanda through 8th grade for Austin, and they are now 35 and 37 years old. So yes, it's I loved the school. I thought it was a great environment. Orangevale is unique. Before we moved out here, I worked for a commercial real estate office downtown Sacramento, and typed every lease for it was Cordano Company who owned Sunrise Mall, and I typed in carbon paper 103 leases for Sunrise Mall, and people said nobody will ever live out there. There's nothing out there. There's who will you attract? And now it's an old mall, and that has to be redone because it's so old. But yes, people have moved out into our neighborhood. It's been fun. I do miss people having horses here. It's just not, our streets are too busy.
They are busy compared to what they used to be.
Oh, yeah. We used to be able to ride our horses down Cherry Avenue, and a few years ago, and now you wear a helmet when you ride your horse. Mm-hmm. Twin Lakes Riding Club is just a block away, and so it does attract people that have their horses. But a few years ago, a woman was riding her horse down Cherry, and she fell off, and they called an ambulance and took her away. Very seldom do you ever see anybody riding their horses around here now. It's just too dangerous. This is also a back entrance into Casa. Yes. And at certain times of the day, there's a line of cars going to Casa, and at the end of the day, another line of cars going back out. We have no sidewalks, and so if somebody's on a horse and a car comes by, usually a car will try to go into the other lane to avoid them, but there's a ditch, and so it's not safe anymore. Yeah. But it was a fantastic time during that time.
So you raised 4 children
here. Yes.
Uh-huh. And did they go to, you said they, at least 2 of them I heard.
Yes, the 2 youngest went to Orangevale School. Stacy and Gary were, we had lived in River Park for 10 years, and they had gone to Caleb Greenwood Elementary. And when we moved here, Gary was in 6th grade at Green Oaks, and Stacy went to 1 year at Pasteur. Mm-hmm. And after a year, my husband decided that wasn't the best placement for her. Mm-hmm. So he enrolled her at Arcade at Fundamental, and so Gary and Stacy went to Arcade Fundamental. A bus used to come and pick them up and take them to Arcade, and then they went to Casa Roble High School, and all 4 of my kids graduated from Casa Roble, and they all did very well, and really happy with the school. So.
What kind? Your husband, I presume, worked. What kind of work did he do?
My husband was worked for the state for 40 years, and retired in 2000. And he was a software engineer towards the end. He started at Caltrans and progressed up to being in the computer network. One of the twins, both the twins are software engineers. Brett works for Google, and I always said that one of the reasons why this probably would have happened otherwise, but when they went to Orangevale Open, we all had lofts in every single room. They were built by the parents, and so when the kids had free time, they could go up into the lofts, which were like about 10 steps up, wooden steps, and then this loft they could be in, and they could read, or my son, and there was a computer there, an old computer. Jim Brigleb was the 6th grade teacher. He had an old computer, and Brett had a BASIC book that his dad had, and so he taught himself to program in BASIC while he was in 6th grade.
Oh, my goodness.
And he now works for Google as a software engineer. His brother picked up software information later when he was probably in high school or all, and it has been a godsend for both of them. That been a very lucrative career for both of them. Blaine and Chelsea have a 1-year-old and live in Santa Barbara. Brett and Anya have a 3 and a 2-year-old. They live in San Mateo, and our son Gary is retired from being a parole officer. He started at Folsom Prison at one time, being a correctional officer, and retired as a parole officer, and has a 5-year-old. And our daughter Stacy and Tim live in Orangevale on Hodge Court off of Hickory. Stacy married Tim Hodge, who lives just down the street. His parents were Lloyd and Sylvia Hodge that lived at the corner of Mountain and Cherry, and they met in high school and have been married 42 years now. And we still get in touch with Jim Clark, whose parents were Marcia and Charlie Clark, and they had an air conditioning and heating company, and he still maintains our heat and air for us, and he said he'll always watch out for us as long as we live here. He's going to make sure that that heat and air stay running. So we have some, well, in fact, our neighbor on the corner, Jeff and Karen Strail, and she teaches kindergarten at Orangevale Open. My daughter was PTA president at Orangevale Open when she was there. My neighbor across the street, the good ones are Crystal and Mike, and their sons were Matt and Kelly. And Matt and Kelly went to Orangevale School, and after my daughter was PTA president, Crystal became PTA president. So we have a...
It sounds like your community grew up a lot. A lot of them
Yes.
grew up in this area
Yes.
and stayed in
and
this
stayed
area.
here. Yes, because the good ones have lived there probably 30 years, and Jeff and Karen, he lived there with his brother before he married Karen, so it was a long time ago. They completely remodeled that house. It was a very small house, and now it's this 2-story, pretty spectacular house. But yeah.
Great. That brings up a lot of community when you have that kind of atmosphere.
Yes. It was a very safe atmosphere. Everybody, in fact, when the kids were little and were playing outside, the thing they say, the street lights come on and the kids come home. This area has no street lights. We also have no sewer. And some of our houses are still on propane, and but we'd have to yell and scream at the top of the hill, and the kids would eventually come home. But it was a very free, enjoyable. They used to go out and play in used to be the 500 acres, which is now Granite Bay.
Yeah.
And have a great time.
Yeah. Great. Okay. A couple of questions just about kind of your family background.
Oh,
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I was born in San Francisco, and we moved to Hillsdale in San Mateo in 1956, 55, 56. And my sister was going to San Jose State and getting a degree in journalism, and I was going to Abbott Middle School and then Hillsdale High School. Let's see, but my mother was born in Paradise. My dad was born in Jackson. They met in San Francisco at a speakeasy. And and so I had never really lived in the Sacramento area. I had spent a year in Hawaii, and in the meantime my mother was taking care of my grandmother, who was living in Yuba City at the time. And so that's why I came up to this area, is to help my mother with my grandmother. But it's just my sister and I. It's not a really large family. My mom's passed, my dad's passed, so I'm the only one left right now.
Oh.
My husband, though, is one of 6, born and raised in Yuba City. Went to Sutter High School, who's very proud of Sutter High School, because Sutter High School has only 700 kids, but they have a really great athletic thing, and
yes.
I constantly hear how well Sutter High School is doing, and he's one of 6 that all live around here, and in Yuba City and close by, so he stays in touch with them. And on my mother's side, we just had a small, my mom had 4 grandkids. Lauren's mom had 19 grandkids.
Wow.
4 of them being mine, so then there were other 15 grandkids, so Lauren has 15 cousins that are all married and have kids.
Oh, wow.
So he has a huge family. Yeah.
So when you have a family reunion, you really
have a family reunion. In fact, they have a high school reunion from Sutter High School every few years, and I've gone to all of the Sutter High School reunions, and they're still having them now. And my husband is 83, so they stay pretty close together. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to your story?
I'll probably think of it after you guys leave.
What was Orangevale like way back then?
And actually, because I was surprised about the history project being interested, even because it doesn't seem like it was that long ago when we moved here in '76. But it was very country. Like I said, Sunrise Mall had just been built. It was a 2-lane road. There was no light at the corner of Hazel and Cherry, and it used to drive me crazy because when my daughter started driving, and of course a 16-year-old girl is going to try and make a left-hand turn onto Hazel Avenue from Cherry. I, on the other hand, would go around the block so that I could hit a light. So that, because it was only a 2-lane road, but they were zooming down there. This place is hard for us to maintain. We just can't really spend the time that we used to on it, and so it's going to be hard to leave this area. But hopefully, we'll find a smaller house on a smaller piece of property in Orangevale or Fair Oaks, so that we can still stay in touch. But yeah, that's
Okay.
that.
I used to ride our horses on Sunrise Mall, but it was just graded flat.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything built out there.
Yeah. I know that Tim's mother, Lloyd and Sylvia, that used to live down the street, and talks about when Tim was riding a pony and he didn't get the cinch on really tight, and she could see him going down Cherry, and as he was riding, the saddle was slightly going sideways, and yeah. And she was laughing so hard, but trying to. He was fine. He didn't get hurt, but anyway, yeah, it's a story that I remember her telling. So yeah, and they've lived here since the 50s, but
Just right down the street from you is a 60-acre park.
that is Rock Corral.
Rock Corral.
And when my kids used to play outside, they used to play in Rock Corral because there wasn't a fence around it or anything. Now there's a fence around it, and there are grinding rocks there. But we've been told by the county that the reason they can't develop it is that there really isn't any parking, and if they took part of that 60 acres on Cherry and put parking in, the people to save Orangevale country life would have an absolute fit. So that's why I'd heard it isn't developed, but yeah.
It's a little bit changed since then.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the idea is the same.
yeah.
They don't have enough people and money to build it out. They have to put restrooms, plumbing,
Yeah.
electrical and stuff, and parking.
And remember, there's no sewer out here. They'd have to run sewer from either Hazel Avenue or, it would just cost way too much. So it's at least it's being preserved. But I know that there are Indian grinding rocks.
I used to camp out over there too.
Yeah, and then people used to let their cows go over there, because I can remember once one of Brett and Blaine's friends coming over, and they were all out there playing, and when his mom came to get him, she said, "Is it safe with those cows?" I've never heard of a cow chasing a child for, it's a cow. They'll run from you. They don't run at you. And so, But I do have a funny story about when we had our steers, and it was hot, and so Lauren put up 4 poles and a cover so that they could go into the shade. And by the end of the summer or a year or so later, the shade cloth no longer existed, but it was hot. Those 4 steers would stand between those 4 poles.
Without a shade.
Without a shade, because they knew that if they stood there that it would be cooler. Yeah, they aren't real bright. Yeah. So, yes. Oh, and then we had a goat because our friends, the Hughes, that had 10 or 20 acres, Iona and George Hughes, on Telegraph. He worked with Lauren for a while, and that's why we moved out to this area, because we'd go to visit the Hughes, and they, in fact, they're the ones that got the realtor for us, the realtor friend of theirs that showed us this place. And I was going to tell you, about Iona and George. She had goats because she milked the goats every day because her kids were lactic intolerant. And so she gave me a goat. And I go, oh, good, I have a goat. I was working at La Sierra High School, and that summer, the goat was only about maybe 9 months old, and my daughter called me, and Stacy had said, "Mom, our goat just had a baby." Our goat had a baby. How is she doing? Oh, she's doing just fine, Mom. I said, okay, well, just call me if you need anything else. Just, okay. And about a half hour later, she says, Mom, she just had another baby. I go, really? Okay, thanks, honey. And so we came home, and we had the goat with these 2 babies. It was a boy and a girl goat. And so never quite figured out how that happened. Virgil is the good old boy that lived next door on 5 acres, and he'd been here long before we did. And Virgil was the salt of the earth and walked around his 5 acres in the morning, surveying it with a beer can in his hand. And he was just down-to-earth guy. And so a few weeks later, I was outside, and he says, "Are you wondering how your goat has babies?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, she looked lonely, so I took her down to his 5 acres, hit some of our other properties, and there was a male goat down there, and he let them visit, then brought it home and never said a word to us." My husband wasn't really happy because he really didn't like goats. And we still have a 63 Ford convertible that he bought new, that's in our barn still, and it has a canvas top. And goats like to jump on things.
Yes, they do.
They jumped on the canvas top, and so we had to get rid of the goats.
Oh.
The end of goats. So yeah, we took them to auction. Yeah, no more goats. Okay, I think that's all the funny stories I know.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's a delight talking to you.
It was fun, guys. I do have a tendency to talk a lot.
Oh, that's fine.
Orangevale Open, the philosophy was that you learn from mistakes, that it's okay to make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. Just do the best that you can do. You want to do not the best somebody else can do. And for a long time, all the report cards were narratives. They weren't A, B's, and C's. Now they're 1, 2, 3s, and 4s, which is A, B, C's, and D's. But they wrote each of them out, and the idea was to make somebody, you're not all talented in one thing, but maybe you can be talented in something else. And so all the classes held plays every single year. And I know that my sons were not the most enthusiastic about it, but it was so cool to see them up there and interacting in a play. Mm-hmm. And they said, later that was something that was they wouldn't have chosen to do, mm-hmm. but it was good for them to get in front of people. And one of the things people have said about the kids from Orangevale School is they feel comfortable talking to adults, mm-hmm. because they interact with adults all day long with all the parents in the classroom. Mm-hmm. But I do remember Carol used to take paper, and instead of having a squared piece of paper, she would cut them into circles or into shapes, because so the kids didn't have to always just draw straight lines, and that they would draw circles and things to be more creative. And she was very, very creative and very artistic, and painted and traveled all over the world. Yeah.
And I did an overnight with the kids over to the Balclutha.
Yes.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, the Balclutha was. Yep. In fact, they haven't been able to do it the last couple of years because of COVID, but I think they're going back to it again. And
they really wanted to go to the next year and take that same ship out. The kids actually sail a ship by themselves.
Oh wow, really?
And the teacher can't talk, and parents can't talk. The kids have to do the whole thing. And at usually the last day, isn't the Balclutha where they put the teacher in a chair and they raise the chair up, mm-hmm. and they won't let the teacher down until they bargain about what she was going to give them.
Oh, how fun.
In order to, and so it might have been an ice cream party, or it might have been something, but the teacher would be suspended up there until that they had this bargaining thing. And the parents were not allowed to be involved in it at all. It was a very unique school.
Yeah. It was fun. I had a good time.
I enjoyed it immensely. I had a couple of times that I had job offers, and no, I had a great time. I think it also made me kinder to be around so many people that were so kind
Yeah.
and considerate, and really tried hard to make a child feel worthy of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of stations set up when they did little station things.
Oh yeah. And what was that called?
There's a name for it.
There's a name for it. There's a name for it, and that was and it was all run by parents, and and each classroom would have 2 to 3 parents, and it was something Thursday, I thought.
Could be.
Something
I forgot the
Thursday.
name.
I forgot the name of it, but there would be a theme, like I can't remember what some of the themes were. It might have been Americana or something. Then all the stations would be, and the kids. Oh, and they had buddies, the big kids and the little kids. And so the big kids would go with the little kids and take them around into all their little stations because they were too little. Kindergarten and first graders were too little. And the parents would teach them. Oh, I remember one time it was music or something, because my daughter did the, what's the thing with the dance that they, I know, I forgot the name of it.
Macarena?
Yeah, Macarena. That was it, Macarena. She taught the Macarena, and it was in like half-hour sessions. So I think there were like 4 half-hour sessions. So yeah.
Do you remember the artwork on all the walls?
Yes, and artwork on all the walls, and
Every
artwork
wall.
was encouraged. That
I tried to save it before they painted it. I
Yeah.
went out there and taped over it and made masks
Oh.
and stuff like that to save the really nice stuff
yeah.
against the MP room.
Oh
And it didn't last but maybe a couple of years, and they repainted it again.
well, they moved the bell from Orangevale School over to the old Roberts location, which is the new Orangevale School. By the way, Orangevale School is now in Fair Oaks.
Oh, really? I was wondering where it went.
And I always thought that was strange that they wouldn't let us call it Orangevale School, but they allowed us to call it Orangevale School. So the bell is over there. And there are ceramic squares that kids did, and it's on the base of that bell, and that's from, I believe, the old location, the ceramics.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's still some left, but just the same, yeah. It's, in today's age, it isn't, you can't have what we had in the 80s, but it was nice for the kids at the time. So, yeah. And that's who you hear is Lulu in the background. She has not stopped barking and probably driving my husband crazy.
I just remember all the artwork. Everything.
All over.
Everything.
Yeah. It was unique. It took a tremendous amount of time on the teacher's part. They didn't get paid anything extra. They had parent meetings, all the field trips, everything else, and they never got anything extra for it because they had their hearts and soul into these kids. And it's not saying that other teachers don't do that too. They all do. But this was an opportunity for them to express themselves with their kids. Pretty cool.